Crocs are one of the most aesthetically unpleasant sights to behold, but at the same time, the term has been a commercial success in every sense of the term. Crocs is a global phenomenon and has reached parts of the earth even as the gospel hasn't. A truly unbelievable success story. It doesn't get better than this. The question then is, how? How did something as ugly looking as Crocs become the world's go-to footwear? How on earth did this happen? What's the story behind it? In this video, we will explain the story of Crocs and how ugly shoes turned into a money-making machine. The year is 2002. Lyndon Hansen, George Bodecker, and Scott Siemens were on a sailing trip around the Caribbean. The main purpose of this trip was to cheer up Hansen, who was going through a very rough patch. He has separated from his wife, lost his mother to cancer, and then lost his job. He was at the lowest of lows. George and Scott, who have been friends with Hansen for quite a while, were hoping this trip would help him clear his head and get him ready to go again. Now, 48-year-old Scott had made a name for himself developing products and was at it again. On the boat, he asked Hansen and George to try out his newest idea, a pair of rubber-like clogs he had been working on after spotting something similar while he was doing some business in Canada. He decided to make improvements based on what he saw. The shoes he saw were manufactured by a company in Quebec and were not produced in mass quantities. The shoes were something he had not seen before, and he thought one or two touches would improve the marketability of the shoes. The shoes were made of rubber or plastic and lacked a back strap. Scott made his own enhancements to the shoes and excitedly showed them to his friends, offering them the chance to try them out. Their immediate reaction was, "Those are ugly." The look of the shoes made them doubt if it was actually a sellable commodity or if Scott was just in over his head. On the other hand, Scott was confident in his new creation and convinced his friends to try them out. It did not take long before both Hansen and George had a change of heart and were finally on the same page with Scott. The shoes were incredibly comfy and light. The experience was so good that they immediately decided to be partners and do business together. They likened the shoes to crocodiles because of their ability to flourish on land and in water, and named the shoes after the reptile. George Washington himself was a successful man by his own rights. He was able to surmount a tough childhood to become a big-name student athlete and own over 100 Domino's Pizza outlets. So there was a reasonable amount of business experience amongst this trio of friends. But the only issue was that none of them had any idea about the shoe market or what it would take to sell a new product. The trio got down to work immediately and started drafting plans on how to distribute this new, Western-looking Canadian shoe in the US. Hansen worked on the plans for the marketing while Scott continued working on the design, and George brought in cash to kick off the business. They set up their own office in Colorado and ordered their first shipment from their supplier. They began to look for ways to sell their new product and figured that if there was anywhere the shoes would be useful, then it would be on a boat deck. So they confidently went to a boat show in Florida with the belief that the uniqueness of the product would at the very least move people to want to try them on. They believe that once a person tries them on and experiences how comfortable and convenient the shoes are, they'll buy them. The idea was to give anyone who walked past the booth the shoes and convince them to ignore the ugly look and wear them. This tactic worked like magic. They sold around 200 pairs of Crocs at the boat show. But that's not the best part. The trio found out through people who worked in other industries and were at the boat show that Crocs would be superb not only for boats but for kitchens, hospitals, restaurants, and anywhere walkers wear their feet for a long time. The trio obviously didn't know the potential of their new company, but what they did know was that they had found a solution to a problem no one had solved. Crocs continued their upward trajectory despite harsh criticism from fashion critics who labeled them as an unfortunate trend and were convinced that it was only a trend that would one day fade away. However, the reverse was the case. Crocs sold 76,000 pairs in 2003 and increased revenue by 2,026% between 2005 and 2006. The trio then went on to purchase the manufacturing company in Quebec that initially produced the version of Crocs that Scott has improved. The purpose of this move was to own exclusive rights to the materials the Crocs are made of. Then they utilized distribution methods that were not used in the footwear industry at the time. What they did was allow retailers to buy as few as 24 pairs of Crocs and restock when they ran out. This meant retailers would not experience losses with Crocs, and in return, retailers were happy to have Crocs in their stores. Like everything else, many people did not like Crocs, but they kept gaining free publicity because they were always talked about. The demand for Crocs continued to rise, and in 2006, the company had its IPO and generated $239 million, making it the highest initial public offering for footwear. The market value also rose to over $1 billion. The company was ranking in millions of dollars for the trio and their early investors, and it seemed the demand for the product and obviously needed expansions became overwhelming. Hanson mentioned that the trio worked endlessly to keep the business growing, and that took a toll on them. However, some of them found this overwhelming experience even more burdensome than the others. And in 2006, things got very messy. Just a couple of months after Crocs went public, George Bodecker made a shocking and disturbing call to his brother-in-law. According to the police report given by George's brother-in-law, George made statements like, "I'm going to bury you so deep no one will ever find you." But that's not all. He also said, "I'm going to slit your motherfucking throat." A couple of minutes later, George showed up at his brother-in-law's office, threatening to fight him. Now, this wasn't the first time George went overboard. There were reports of George's erratic and seemingly violent behavior. All these behaviors and incidents led to the board's removal, which only made things worse. You see, George played a vital role in the growth and development of the company. His passion, management skills, and early investments in the company were very important to its rise. But right now, things are unimaginably different. As we gathered while researching for this video, the company has distanced itself from one of the key players responsible for its existence. The icing on the cake was in 2012, when George was apprehended by the police for drunk driving. His response to the situation was that his girlfriend was driving the car, and his girlfriend was superstar Taylor Swift. First of all, Taylor Swift was not his girlfriend, and he was the only one in the car. He was heavily under the influence of alcohol. This situation didn't do any good for crocodiles. When George was removed from the board, the person who took his position was one of Hansen's friends who let him share his crib when he was at the lowest of lows after losing his wife and mother. That person was Ron Snowder. With Ron at the helm, Crocs enjoyed some of the most successful period it had experienced since it was created. Crocs became an even bigger international brand, and revenues continued to grow. Crocs established licensing agreements with the NBA and Disney. The company began acquiring adjacent companies, and most importantly, sales continued to grow, with the company peaking at $847 million in 2007. The company was a force to be reckoned with until the financial crisis of 2008, which brought unexpected roadblocks to not just Crocs, but a lot of companies. Sales went down as a result of consumers not buying. When sales dipped, the young company was not only left holding a surplus of product, but it also didn't have a good grasp of how much inventory its retailers had. And in 2009, revenue plummeted to $646 million, and the stock dipped to $1 a share. And like that wasn't enough, several speculations that Croc design was ripped off by Scott began to rise. One of such allegations was that Crocs were a lookalike of an Italian shoe that existed well before the emergence of Crocs, and that Scott was aware of this Italian shoe. The stocks continued to take a big hit as a result of all these allegations, and it seemed like predictions that this fad would go down in flames were finally coming true. Despite all this, Crocs is still alive, well, and going strong. It is now a billion-dollar company, so how did Crocs complete the comeback? When Crocs started marking a comeback, the question on everyone's lips was how? Well, it's quite simple, a combination of smart marketing and influencer partnerships. Crocs took advantage of the fact that many top celebrities had been spotted rocking them. Plus, the company also realized that its power were deeply rooted in the product's ability to polarize opinions. They began to utilize this by referring to Crocs fans as bold and one-of-a-kind as they pushed out a message of acceptance. They then partnered with superstar Justin Bieber, who is one of the biggest pop stars in the world, and also with Post Malone, who has an equally massive fan base. Collaborations with Kentucky Fried Chicken established Crocs' identity as a cultural chameleon who could collaborate with literally anything. They also used collaborations to gain as much publicity as they could, as they partnered with supermodels and some brands like Balenciaga. They also decided to embrace the possibilities of e-commerce, closing down some of their most expensive retail stores to embrace online shopping. This came in handy during the pandemic, as Crocs sales went through the roof as people desired comfort and convenience while they were stuck at home. In fact, 2020 was Crocs' best year since the company was founded. The sales in 2020 went up by 300%. And in 2021, the company reported a record sales of $2.3 billion. That's simply unbelievable. The cultural impact of Crocs has made a mockery of all skeptics who predicted it would fall off. Crocs sell in almost every country of the world today, and sales continue to grow. And for a product whose founder thought was ugly, it has done amazingly well in the market. Thanks for watching this video. We know you definitely enjoyed this one. Give this video a like and share it with your friends so they can learn. If you have been entertained by this video, then there's more where it came from. Subscribe to the channel to find other expository videos like this one, and you'll be amazed at the things you didn't know. See you on the next video. Cheers.